Record to the, there we go. Okay, so I'm gonna get right into it. If I don't notice that you've got a hand up, Emily and Andréane, if you can let me know. I've got Andréane right next to me. Emily coming in remote, so that's great. Okay, so just a quick overview of what we're doing today. I'm not going to go through this step by step, but we do have some interesting things that have come up just in the last week that we want to discuss. And the first one is we had another CBC News article about hate groups within Canada, showing up at MMA clubs and potentially boxing clubs. The original story was focused on Southern Ontario. A story that just came out on Monday this week was focused on Eastern Canada, Western Canada, and specifically the BC area. Every time one of these comes up, we would encourage provinces who get any phone calls from the media, if you don't feel like you can handle them or you just are unsure what to do, forward those media questions to the national office. Every time one of these has come up, the national office goes through and we do a double check on who are members, if there are people, individuals named in the story, if there are clubs named in the story, are they currently affiliated clubs with our provinces? And we sort of build out some statements that we can put out towards the media. About 4 months ago, when the first story came out in Southern Ontario, the club owner who was affiliated with Boxing Canada and Boxing Ontario, they did a great job in dealing with it, and we thank them for that work. We're glad that they were able to work well and didn't need any response. We did actually contact them to say, hey, you went through a lot there. Good work. You did everything beautifully. Do you need any help? And as it turns out that we worked with them a little bit afterwards about, say, policy changes and screening and stuff. But we haven't had any any serious media inquiries, I should say, after this last story on Monday. But the one on Monday did not really focus on boxing strictly, although there were some past tie-ins with some of the individuals mentioned crossing over into the boxing community, but it was not significant. So if you guys have any questions on how to deal with this, certainly, like I said, call the national office. We're happy to help out. But we have not seen a lot of follow-up on this. So that's all I have to say about that. If there are any questions, let me know. Okay, and I will move on. So we've had quite a few, it's been AGM season. We've had quite a few provinces that have had some updates to their presidents. In fact, one of them is on here. Congratulations, Dylan, on moving from the vice presidency in Saskatchewan up to the presidency. As these changes happen, it would be really helpful if you guys can just let us know, particularly around a few key positions. So the presidents, any staff, and then chief officials. It's always good for us to know who they are, because we've got our national officials committee who needs to be dealing directly with them. If you've got someone in high performance who is a sole decision maker, either on the staff side or on the volunteer side, or at least is representing sort of a high performance committee, it's always good for us to know who they are, because of course we've got information that we would love to have their feedback on and would love to be passing to them. If you've got someone who's doing coach development, absolutely having them known to us is critical, particularly because we need to know who requires access to the CAC's database called the Locker, ou en français le casier. And we can get them up to speed on that system if they require training on it. And then, of course, anyone who is dealing with events, and whether that's at a sanction level or whether that's at a coordination level, we just like to know who they are so that we can pass pertinent information down. There are a number of smaller provinces, for whom they may not have individuals who are specifically responsible for any one of those major areas. And for some of those smaller provinces, particularly around access to the coach database, the NSO is actually acting on behalf of the PTSO in those cases. We are happy to do it. It's not a lot of workload on us to, input the results of a training course, like an instruction beginner course every now and then. And it can often be easier for us to do it if your volunteer resource is only having to enter something like once a year or twice a year. That can be a lot of things to remember and a lot of course to go through or education to go through just to be able to do that at that once a year basis. So like I said, we're happy to do it if it's needed. But updates on any of those positions are valuable for us, just so that we know who we should be contacting. Moving on to some quick high performance updates. So we're getting towards the end of the year. Of course, we've got our nationals in 2 weeks over in Manitoba. Our national athlete list. We continue updating this list, and there will be significant updates, of course, after Elite Nationals. And we've just wrapped up our U23 camp with our assessments, and we're doing some updates on our national categorization system right now. The results of that categorization will be put up as we have evidence for athletes to change their categorization. And just a quick reminder, the categorizations within that document are they world class? Essentially, are they top 8 within the country at a world champion? Sorry, top 8 within the world at either world championships or an Olympic Games. And then we've got the next classification down of podium potential, and that's essentially a top 8 result at a World Cup or top 3 result at a World Challenge event. And then we have an emerging category. And for an emerging category, if you're a top 1 at a U19 World Championships, which of course we didn't have this year, we've had last year and we will have next year. Or if you're identified as an emerging athlete within Canada by either assessment, which is, we just had our assessment camp here in Montreal, or you as a U23 aged athlete win our Elite National Championships. That will get you automatically into that emerging group. So we'll find out in 2 weeks how many more athletes we have move into the emerging category. And then our last categorization is our national squad of athletes. And so any athlete who wins a national championship, either in the Elite Nationals, in the U23 Nationals, or at the U19 Nationals, is named to that squad. So that update to categorization is ongoing. And related to that, we have an athlete dashboard that categorizes that categorizes the categorization, that highlights each athlete's categorization and by what result got them that categorization. But we also have a carding dashboard. So for our athlete assistance program carding monies that are available through Sport Canada and the federal government, you can see what level of criteria each individual athlete has met. And we're now down to our last sets of criteria for the year. So the results of this assessment camp, combined with the results of our national championships for elite athletes, will sort of finalize that document. So we've already got a number of athletes who've met carding criteria, and then we'll just fill out the rest of them in 2 weeks plus 2 days. We'll have all those results ready to go. The National Team Program 2026 is out. It's been sort of soft published starting in September and hard published starting in October. I just want to point out a few major highlights there. We are making a suggested change for our national championships, and this is not final by any means, but we're publishing our suggested change at this point, and there'll be an opportunity over the next 3 or 4 months for provinces to provide feedback. Currently, we have a system where the top 2 athletes per province, plus our national champions from the previous year, plus any athletes who missed out on any selection opportunities because they were representing our national team at an international competition. Plus, we have a number of wildcard spots. And that's sort of how you get into our nationals right now. And based on our number of athletes who have been registered for the elite championships this year, we feel that that worked pretty well. We've got a number of categories that are at 16. I think 2 categories that are at 16 registrants right now, and
Hey, buddy.
and
You too.
quite a few other categories where we're over 9 but under 16. So I think we're in a good spot. But we're making this suggested change next year that we go to 1 guaranteed spot per province per weight class, plus all of those things that we talked about before. So if you're the previous champion, or you're a recipient of a wild card spot, or if you were representing the national team somewhere and couldn't qualify, like couldn't make a provincials because of what you were doing, then we get a spot for you. But we're also interested in this idea of how can we support some of our major 4-day tournaments across the country. And so we've got the Quebec Open, we've got the Canada Cup, and we've got the Brampton Cup. And we're toying with this idea of, if you win the elite open category at one of those 3 tournaments, that you would be guaranteed a spot at our national championships. And I think one of the concerns that came up last night when we floated this was, well, that puts 2 of those qualification tournaments out east, only one of them in the west. And one of the tournaments in the east right now, with the Brampton Cup, we know that the focus of that tournament isn't necessarily on elite open competition, and the total number of registrants that get into that competition within the first, say, 24 hours of registration opening is quite high. And we may actually have people who want to be able to get in and have an opportunity to qualify for nationals not be able to qualify for nationals if they're relying on that tournament to do it. And our response there is, yep, we took that into consideration. I'm still interested in going down this route because we do have this wild card opportunity to select athletes into nationals. And I think we have seen the majority of our provinces make really good use of wildcard spots. And since we brought in the wildcard system in early 2024, what we've seen is that the quality of competition at our nationals has not dropped. In fact, I would argue it has gone up. And I would argue it's gone up because we are no longer leaving strong athletes who just barely missed out on making that 2 per province standard able to go to nationals. And because those wild cards are being used essentially to fill up spots, what I think we haven't seen is that we haven't seen a situation where any deserving athlete has not been able to get to our national championships. So I think in practical terms, the system is working well. And like I said, we're interested in some feedback on what this would look like if we went to this system. So I don't need that feedback today, but I just put that out there so you guys can bring that information back to your provinces and say, hey, a year from now at our 2026 Elite Nationals, what would our team look like if we had a system of 1 start per province plus wildcards plus anyone who had done well at any one of those major tournaments? So I leave that out there for you guys to think about. If anyone feels compelled to speak about it now, certainly don't hold back. But like I said, I think having the discussions internally with your provinces first would be valuable, and then we can bring feedback, probably back through our high performance update meetings would be great. Looking at other high performance news. So again, the U23 assessment camp, we just finished that up. The assessments all went out in the last 3 days and were sent out to the individual athletes and their personal coaches. We've got some overview information that will be published on our website that is not athlete specific, but is just sort of letting everyone know what the overall quality was. And some of the outcomes of that meeting, of course, are that a number of athletes will be identified as emerging. I think there were 5 who we feel met the standard to be assessed as emerging out of the 55 athletes who attended that camp. And what I will say, I was there at the camp for a majority of the time that the camp was on. It was the highest quality sparring camp that we've seen, certainly in the time that I've been involved with the program directly. And even going back in my time when I was an advisor to the high performance program, working for On the Podium for 8 years before that. So I was very impressed, and I think our coaches were impressed. The feedback that we're getting through our direct athlete feedback forums has been quite positive. And I know that the coaches who were running that camp were actually just in a meeting before this and are probably still in that meeting. Sort of talking about what went well, what didn't go well, and what would we change for next year. So I'm pretty happy about that. Looking at elite nationals, of course, we've got the draw coming up next Wednesday. That'll be a remote draw. All the information on which athletes are registered, what categories are they in, what do the draw brackets look like, what does the schedule look like, sort of in blocked out terms. All that is already available. It's available if you go to the handbook. You can pick it up there. And we certainly encourage everyone to log in. I'm not sure that watching a draw is going to be the most exciting thing you could do on a Wednesday night, but it is available for anyone to look at. I will note that as published in the handbook, we are going to use a draw methodology that is not simply a straight random draw. We had the express written goals of trying to minimize the number of athletes who meet another athlete from their home province in the first round, right? So we want to minimize the number of times that, say, Manitoba and Manitoba meets up in a prelim, okay? It is impossible to eliminate this totally. But when we are using a random draw, we were seeing it creep up, I mean, as often as it creeps up. But with some provinces having a high number of athletes come in under wild cards, and there's one particular weight class that I'll pick on, it's the men's 60, where we've got a full 16 athletes, and we have 5 coming in all from one province. And part of that is because there are additional wild cards. And part of it is because they were lucky enough to have top seeded athletes also. So they've got the number 1 seed, and then they've got wild cards as well. What we are going to do is we're going to do a grouped draw, which means that when we do the draw, the top seeded athletes are still protected in the draw. That's not a problem. But what we are going to do is we are going to first sort the draw group by province. And within that sort, we are going to randomly assign each athlete who is unseeded essentially a seeding within their province, and that will happen randomly. So if we've got 2 athletes from Manitoba, one of them will randomly be assigned the first slot from Manitoba, and one will be assigned a second slot from Manitoba. Then we will then randomly draw within the group 1. So all the first athletes from each province will be randomly assigned a position within the start groups. And then we will go down to the second group of athletes. So the second athlete from Manitoba, second athlete de Quebec, the deuxième athlete de Ontario, the second athlete from Saskatchewan. And we will then randomly assign them into the draw. And then if we need to go down to a third start group and a fourth start group, we will go down. What this does is it does minimize the number of times an athlete can meet up against a provincial counterpoint or a provincial partner within the first group, provided that the group sizes are relatively the same. When we have an extreme situation like the men's 60, what we will end up doing is pretty much guaranteeing that the province who has the most athletes there will very likely end up. In fact, it is, I will say it's very likely. It's not a certainty because randomness is randomness, but it is a high certainty that in the first round, with Ontario having 5 athletes out of 16, that there will be what we call a collision, a provincial collision happening. We actually modeled this out, testing out pure random versus this grouped system. And we ran 20 iterations on particular categories to see what this looked like. And what we found is that there was an advantage to meeting our goals of minimizing interprovincial conflict. It doesn't eliminate it completely, but it minimizes it. So I am very interested in going forward with this. We said we were going to try to do this. We had tremendous feedback after both of our last national championships, elite and U23, U19, U17, that coaches wanted this to happen because we don't want people flying across the country just to have their first bout be against someone who they just literally fought against a few weeks ago at provincials, right? We want to give people as much opportunity to benefit from the national championships in getting different competitive stimulus as possible. So I just gave everyone a heads up on that. We will do an explanation of how that works during the draw meeting. We will run one demonstration and then we will run all of the draws using that system. Okay, and then I will point out we've got a lot of coaches registered. I'm always surprised in boxing that we seem to have, almost, one coach for every 2.5 athletes, sometimes even more than that. But we're happy to have coaches. I will say that the number of coaches who failed to meet the minimum standards this year that are published for qualification in the handbook, there were only 4. And out of those 4, each of them were able to very quickly meet the minimum standards because they were only missing 1 or 2 things. This is a significant change from previous years where more than half of the coaches did not meet the minimum standards. So I want to thank each of the provinces who have implemented their own internal to their own province minimum standards, because it is making a significant difference. And it makes us look really good in the eyes of Sport Canada when we're able to have these minimum standards, and we will continue bumping these minimum standards up. I want to note we've got a U23 camp already scheduled for September 2026. It's a slightly different time frame than it was this year because, of course, we had to deal with World Championships. But we think that the September time frame is actually better because it provides greater flexibility for athletes to participate in that camp and then be able to attend provincial championships. And then note for PTSOs around high performance stuff. So this year we had an opportunity for every PTSO to put in their recommendations for anyone who we might have missed in any selection activities. And we're going to continue with this because we get good feedback from you guys. We also are heartened that the number of additional nominations for any selection activity that we get from you guys are usually, it's a small number because we are capturing the right athletes through the regular selection process, but we don't know everybody. And we want to make sure that if we have our selection criteria has overlooked someone, that there is an opportunity for those people to be considered. So we thank everyone for that. And reminder about U19, U17, U23 nationals. It is being held at the same time as the Canada Cup in Calgary, March 18th to the 21st. Registration for that is live right now. And that event is being co-hosted with an open tournament. So even if someone doesn't make the provincial team that's going to the national championships, you can still go and compete at the open tournament. Same way we did with the Quebec Open this year. And we're also co-hosting an Indigenous only novice tournament at the same time. So if you have Indigenous athletes who are looking to get some of their first bout experiences, there will be a protected category happening at the same time within that tournament where they can go and get a bout matched up directly by weight. So they're not necessarily having to register into a weight class. We will do the matching ourselves in order to get as many people participating in that first couple bouts of their career as possible. And we will have 3 judges of running that those bouts. And each of those judges and the referee will be members of our organization, of course, Boxing Canada, who identify as being Indigenous. So we're really trying to push this as a safe environment for athletes to get those first bouts. And then again, U23 camp in September. Wow, I've got that 3 times on the same slide. And then Elite Nationals in Cape Breton in November, late November, and we'll have final details published before, well, hopefully in 2 weeks, so we can announce it formally at Winnipeg 2025 Elite Nationals. I'll take a breath for a second and then get into membership. If anyone has any questions on high performance, let me know. Hey, hearing none, I'm going to look at membership. So I'm happy to say we are ahead in membership registrations of where we were last year. And last year we were ahead of where we were in 2024. This is going well. So we have just passed 2,500 memberships in our system so far for 2026. I remind we are trying to ship everything out Wednesdays from our national office here in Montreal. We are trying to use Canada Post more often for small shipments. We have been very, I want to say strategic, but that's not the right word. We've now got a process in place where regardless of how many memberships we see come in a week, we are trying to get them out the door that week. We're not waiting, even with small numbers. So, I mean, yesterday we had what, 2 from Manitoba, right? And we stuck them in an envelope. It was just renewals. So they're just little stickers. It was easy for us to put a stamp on it and get it out because we don't want people having to wait. However, I do want to put in everyone's mind this idea of if we are shipping membership products directly to each province, and then the province is then having to ship them out somehow directly to the individuals, are we doubling up efforts? And essentially, is boxing writ large paying twice to ship things to our members? And if we have an opportunity to do direct shipping on some of those products that don't require any oversight, and I would suggest that, say, things like, recreational memberships might be one, memberships for officials might be one, membership products for coaches might be a target for this. Books, I'm not so sure about, right? Like it's nice to have some control over books and over renewals, but if there's an opportunity for us to just direct ship, we're going to start reaching out province by province and probably piloting with some of our smaller provinces this opportunity to just ship things direct to our members. Because if that's saving you guys some money on a provincial level and saving your volunteers or your staff from having to do that work, then I think there may be a benefit overall. So we're going to play around with this a little bit. And I know that some provinces have already asked us the question. So we are looking at it. A few things to note on changes within sort of what we're doing with membership. The first is we are moving away from the laminated wallet cards to a PVC plastic wallet card. So it looks more like a driver's license card. No photos, thank goodness. But we do have those coming. And so you'll see that we actually just ran out of laminations this week, right? So we've switched over to just doing the PVC cards for some products. Coach cards are all the lanyard style now, and we think they're really valuable because they do have coach levels and coach safe sport status on them. At nationals, those coaches are required to wear those cards in order to be able to participate. And we are going to be switching up those paper inside of the plastic system to just punching a hole in the PVC wallet size cards and putting them on a lanyard and going forward, because that's reducing the number of materials that we have to keep in stock here. If we can just use a single system, we're going to use a single system. So we're going to be moving in that direction. I do want to remind everyone it is super important that we get proper contact information for all of our members. Our insurance company is not happy when they see that we can't actually contact people. So emails and phone numbers when you're submitting the membership information is critical. And a reminder for everyone who is running memberships and selling memberships for your province, you can use the Tracky system in order to send out direct emails to remind people who have already been members that it's renewal time. And we've helped out a few provinces with this, and I know Ontario is making good use of the Tracky system in this. And what we're seeing is that when membership renewal reminders are going out, that we are seeing higher responses from those individuals who receive that communication. So it is always better to get membership dollars early. It just makes budgeting for you guys and for us, frankly, way easier. So I just remind everyone that the system can do it. Also, we are updating the Tracky system to have a suspended membership notification system. So when a membership is suspended in one province, it is both a provincial membership, but it is also a national membership. And when a suspension happens in one province, that suspension should be honored, and the intention of, I think, by everyone is to honor that suspension everywhere. But of course, we don't have a good way of sharing that information, and especially for smaller provinces who only have volunteers who are administering membership and dealing with suspensions, for whatever reason that suspension happens. It can be a lot to have them try to decide, like, how much of this information do I share with other people? Some provinces, you're required to keep a suspended list that's public, especially around safe sport issues. And what we're hoping is that Tracky will be able to put together a system where that information is shared in an appropriate way that meets all necessary provincial standards around both transparency, but also respect for people's privacy, and can just sort of act as an easy solution. And of course, if you've got someone who's requesting a membership and they start registering themselves into Tracky, or your volunteer membership coordinator registers them into Tracky, and all of a sudden it flags out that, oh, hey, they're actually a suspended member for another 6 months in another province. That way, like, it comes up and it's flagged, and we don't run into any collisions with intentions there. So we're working on building that out. As that system is put together, we'll test it. We'll open it up for testing by a few provinces at first, in order to see if it's working the way we want it to work. but I'm hoping that by the end of 2026 that we've got that fully up and integrated. And again, that it meets any safe sport needs and safe sport needs that are specific to different provinces. It meets all of the appropriate standards for disclosure, both protecting the rights of suspended members and also all the rest of our members, and that it reduces workload on the provinces. So it's coming. And just a quick note, the 90-day membership before sparring is something that a few of our provinces have been toying with, and I know Ontario has gone all in on this. It looks like feedback so far is that this is going really well for them. I know there were a lot of concerns especially from club owners and from coaches, that this would be really difficult to implement, but it sounds like all the feedback I'm getting through Ontario it has been quite positive on this. And so I applaud Ontario for taking the leap on that. And I encourage the provinces to take a strong look at this. It just makes sense from a risk management point of view that before we allow our members to get in the ring, that they have been a bona fide member, they've done enough training, and that we've done our due diligence to make sure that our coaches have been able to assess that they're going to be safe in their participation.
Hey, Chris, just for what we've done is on that 90-day membership, we've obviously there's been lots of kinks and people getting that understanding, but the sparring piece isn't applicable. Is that's still okay on the membership piece?
Okay.
That's an insurance, that's the insurance side, right? So, and I don't know if that's something that you're looking at, but the 90 days is a solid rule, the solid policy for us at this point before competing. Obviously, getting into a competition, you're going to require some sparring, and if you have not, if you're sparring without that membership, you negate all of your insurance. So I don't know if if that was your question mark there at the bottom, but we had some confusion at the beginning, but it seems to be we've had it almost a year now, and it's been a great thing to do. So
yeah, thank you for thank you for tidying up the mess that I just left verbally there. But any provinces that are interested in finding out more about that, I would encourage them to get in touch with Eric. Because like I said, I think his leadership and Ontario's leadership on this has been very valuable. And like I said, despite, I mean, Eric acknowledged there was some confusion, but I don't think it was significant. And it certainly, everything I've heard is that it's been going really well.
Here's my second.
Morning, it's Donor Set from Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
In terms of that last comment, how do you police those clubs to ensure that they're complying with the 90-day factor?
well, for us, they cannot compete unless if they. We've had a couple just come up recently. If they have not been registered for 90 days, they cannot compete. So their 90 days, and then obviously from a renewal perspective, that doesn't change. But especially from a novice perspective and a new boxer, the requirement is that, and 90 days is what we're finding is that's starting to become more of a sufficient time to be able to feel comfortable in the ring and those kind of things. So we're lessening the risk, but they cannot compete until after their 90 days.
Sure, and I get that, and I think that's a great following for all provinces to do in light of what happened in Manitoba, for sure. I think the comment that I have here is around the recreation members. Kind of it's kind of the really not registering. The registering as recreation members, so the liability issue for me in our province is are they covered if they're a recreation member under Boxing Canada? If we're putting them in the ring sparring, so that's kind of the challenge we're facing around ensuring that unless clubs are carrying an extra insurance policy themselves, and they're not registering those people as competitors, that's been our challenge, is the recreation members.
Yeah, and a recreational sparring membership is available, right? And they should be doing it. And if we find out that they're not, then that they're not registered, then absolutely, those individuals and the clubs are at significant liability, and that's something that they need to be educated about.
Right. And we've kind of been going through that, Christopher, in terms of, what we say to people, as opposed to, it's important that, that they have the people there, but we also ask them to register them as competitors, because then they fall under that liability if the clubs aren't carrying that additional, insurance. So that's kind of what we're pushing our groups to do. Not all of them follow that science, but again, it's reiterating the liability that that they could be under, and certainly it would put our association in a bit of a backfold as well, right? So,
And Donald, from my experience, I think that's the correct way to do it, because I mean, we don't see, and we don't encourage, and we don't necessarily allow recreational members to spar. Like, we don't see a need for sparring at a recreational. Like, if it's mom and dad that are trying to get their exercise in, so to speak, that
Right.
doesn't make sense to us. So, but if you want
Yeah.
to go on a competition route, which that's, so you hit it bang on, where that becomes the 90-day applicable, right? And the sparring piece is
Right.
attached to that. So
Yeah, and maybe that's the policy that we have to develop here in our province, to ensure that that we are having some kind of policing involved in it. Particularly when we know that not all clubs carry that additional insurance themselves. So thanks for your comments. I really appreciate that.
Great, good conversation there. And certainly getting to a culture where people are just registering all their participants early, I think is where we're trying to go. A reminder that starting January 1st, 2026, the national office is putting its prices up, right? We published this more than 4 months ago for everyone to take a look at. And just a reminder, so any of the competition or any of the membership categories in green are ones where we are upping our fees. The ones in red are where we're reducing our fees that we're taking. I totally, full transparency, we're not reducing any of those categories enough that it is a net loss for us. This is a net gain. But given that our registration fees have not moved in the last 3 years, we're a little bit behind in terms of where inflation has taken us. And we have committed to letting everyone know, letting all of our provinces know where we're intended to take those fees for 2027 and 2028 well in advance. So we've got that sort of charted out here. Philosophically, I do want to remind everyone that one of the reasons why I am so adamant that we need to drop the NSO fees for some types of memberships are simply because the NSO doesn't have a whole lot of contact with those members. You guys are the ones providing programming for them. And our intention isn't necessarily for the total amount that one of those participants is spending on their membership to go down. It's simply for that amount of money that we are not taking in, that you guys have access to it, right? So if say a recreational membership is $50, and we're dropping our fee. Well, recreation maybe isn't a good one for me to use, because right now we're going up to 6. But let's say a U13 membership, right? We're dropping our fees from what was 40 down to 30. So that extra $10, like, keep that extra $10, right? Like, you guys go and put it to good use, because you guys are the ones running events and programming that are serving those individuals. So I want to make sure that's clear for everyone, that we just think it's a smart thing to do. But some of those membership categories are, let's say, we'll call them exotic, right? Like, there are only 2 people who are registered as executive committee / lifetime members across the entire country last year. So, for us to lose the whatever $24 times 2, it is not going to make a significant dent in us by any means. So Anyway, I just wanted to remind everyone of that. So if you're interested in having, you know, memberships sold at the previous amounts or values, continue doing that now. But coming January 1st, the invoiced amounts coming out of us will be changed. Okay, talking about coaching programs, Andréane, do you want to just very quickly highlight the sort of two big changes that we've had? I'm not sure if I can hear you. I don't have a lot of controls on my screen right now. Oh, here we go. I can mute my.
Andréane, on t'entend pas.
No, they are not hearing you. Yeah. Speak up.
Okay, so biggest change that we've had now, we just put up a post on our website regarding the boxing e-modules for ComDev, for the ComDev pathway. So they were already up and running on the locker for a while now, but those were the old modules that were previously hosted on our old platform that we decided to let go. But all the layout and like the user experience were all like remade from scratch, and it also offers just a better experience for coaches to go through the modules, and it's also less bulky like previously from the huge text that we had. So they're up and running on the locker now. Just a reminder that to access those, coaches need to be Comp Intro certified, because if not, then they won't be able to like start the courses. So if you wanna, or if any coaches are looking to get started with those, they need to have their certification, and they'll be able to access those. And also just a reminder, to be Comp Dev trained, they will need to not only complete those, but also all the NCCP modules for the Comp Dev pathway. So once all of those modules are completed, then the coach is trained, and then we're going to be looking to like the next steps, which are the evaluations of the portfolio that are divided into 6 sections. So if you have any questions about this, you can send me an email and I'll be able to provide more details on that as well.
Okay, great. So thanks, Andréane, for that update. Just two quick other things sort of in this coaching sphere. So the first is, if you don't know who your locker administrator is for your province, contact Andréane, we can get that set up. It is not necessary that you are that your province has a locker administrator, but it can be very helpful, especially for double checking that coaches have the qualifications that they say they do. Of course, with the new membership cards, it should be written on them, but there may be delay between when a coach, say, takes a course and when they get their updated card, because we will be sending out updated cards as coaches become certified midway through their membership cycle. The other thing that I think is of interest is we now have a growing number of provinces who have implemented a minimum standard for coaching. And I know I had the privilege of being at the Ontario Provincials this year, where we did a blitz of in-person evaluations to make sure that everyone there was meeting the minimum standard of instruction beginner certified. And I think it went really well, frankly. We didn't have any coaches who were denied the opportunity to participate. It really felt nice actually to be able to do that and provide that service. So if you're interested in setting a minimum standard and are curious about what that would do, let us know, because we can do quickly the research. We can have Andrian go through the locker and pull out all of our members in your province and see what the level of coaching is at this time. And you know, are you ready to make that change, or are we gonna, you know, wait for a year in order to make that change and let all the coaches know, look, you've got a year in order to get a level of certification or bump things up. I think we should, at the national level, we should be pushing at our national championships anyway, to have this minimum of competition introduction certified. And I think we should be targeting 2028 for this. The idea that coaching at a national championships can be done with just an instructional level certification, I think it's adequate for now, but it is not adequate when looking at what we are actually trying to achieve with having certified coaches and high quality programming available for our top athletes. So I think we'll continue pushing towards there. And just another quick reminder, there are still a number of websites out there at the provincial level who are, you know, still making reference to the old 1, 2, 3 program. And as simple a nomenclature as that is, it hasn't been that for quite a while. So if we can get those updated, that's great. If you require any assistance with that and figuring out what the new nomenclature is or what that means, or you don't know what to link to on the national site, just let us know, right? We're happy to help you guys out. Okay. Looking at officials programs. We've got our national officials committee. They're doing great work. They did the selections for nationals, and now they're starting to tackle a few other projects. The pathway for officials is posted onto our website. And I think we're starting to get a lot more traction on that. We had our second ever officials update meeting for all officials across the country, because for the 2025 year, we had a total of 306 officials memberships. And we put out a feeler to all of them and invited them to that meeting, and we got 30 onto that call. It was fantastic. So there's a lot of direct programming available for them that we're starting up. And the first of those direct programming is that we are looking at providing essentially a coach for officials at each of our national championships. So there will be, in world boxing terms, they call it an evaluator, but we're not looking at it as an evaluator. We're not looking to tell people when they're doing a bad job. What we're trying to do is we're trying to help people do a good job, and we're trying to uplift everyone. So we're starting with that, and then there'll be a few other initiatives coming out, and I think I'm making reference to them here. Yeah, so international opportunities for officials. So there'll be two types of these. So for open international competitions where Boxing Canada is sending a national team, and the organized committee of that event is asking us to send an official, we will have selection criteria for officials published as part of our national team program. And so that's in the NTP 2026 right now. And we are going to be adding to that an opportunity for our officials to be selected to come and help out at national team training camps. Because if we've got all the best athletes in the country all in one place, and we're looking for feedback for those athletes that we can provide through scores, then why not have an opportunity for, you know, a number of our level 4 officials who are interested in participating to come in and provide us that service. So we're building that component out for our major camps. but we've got camps scheduled for January and for September next year, where we know that we are going to need, a judge's wise eye, providing feedback that our athletes and coaches can use in order to optimize for performance. So we're looking at having these other opportunities, primarily, let's say, for level 4s and ups, but primarily for level 4s, to be able to practice officiating at sort of with this, best group of athletes that we've got in the country at any time. So we've got that coming. And then looking at some of the other changes. One, we're going to move to officials' lanyards. Whether they get worn as lanyards, that's entirely up to you guys. I'm not sure that that's the best way to go, but this idea of having the level and some sort of safe sport status available and be able to be projected to other participants at events, I think is very important. And the coaches seem to be pretty good with doing this, certainly at the national level. And we encourage this to happen at the provincial level as well. But we are going to start piloting, sending out these officials lanyard cards that they can wear. You'll start seeing that trickle out sometime starting in 2026. And then based on the feedback that we get on them, then we will either convert that to a full national program starting in 2027, or potentially it doesn't fly, so we'll scrap it. But I think we're moving in the right direction here. And then the other update that we're doing is we're going to start using the locker, so the CAC database, in order to track officials' education and status. And we took a really hard look at whether we could do this effectively or not, and it looks like we can. The CAC has said you can do this for free. There will be no fees for any of this, which is good because we're all about free stuff. But also we took a look at all of those 306 officials that we have currently in our system, and we cross-referenced that against how many of them already had accounts existing on the CAC database, and it was almost 90%. So I don't think we're going to be asking anything new of a lot of our members. Now, granted, some of our officials, their coaching certifications or their interactions with the coaching system may have been so long ago that they have an account on the locker, but they may never have known that they've got an account because they've never had to use it. But we do know that there's some crossover there. But we're looking at having each of the written tests that our officials need to do hosted on that system. And I think that provides two things. One is it provides a level of consistency in the testing. And I think it also provides an opportunity where we have some sort of outside record that our officials have achieved what they said they've achieved. Because primarily in officiating, not so much in coaching, but in officiating, we actually have a number of situations where people have said, hey, look, I took this program or I was evaluated, to go, say, from level 2 to level 3, but no one actually wrote it down. And the person who provided that upgrade is either no longer a member or potentially is no longer with us, unfortunately. So we're losing out on record keeping. And I think that using this existing database service provided by the Coaches Association could be a major win for us. So we're going to start piloting this year and see how it goes. And then looking at full integration into that system if it's working out starting in 2027. So, any questions on any of that officiating stuff?
Where are we at on that supervisor's course?
The supervisor's course remains sort of perpetually sort of 1 month away. I know that the officials committee has got a priority of getting through that sort of in December once nationals is over, and be ready to roll that out early in January. So, well, I shouldn't say early in January. I should say early in the new year. And the intention of that supervisor's course is to have it available to everyone who has a certain level of officiating proficiency. The intention is not to force people who are already active ring supervisors to have to do that in order to continue ring supervising. We will be interested in grandfathering people into the system, but we would encourage every official who is currently operating as a ring supervisor to go through that program. And what we'll probably do is have some sort of freebie for those who are already ring supervisors, just to encourage them to go through it, because we want their feedback on the content.
I think it's important on the maintenance side, so we'll be ready for January 2027.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yep. Good catch. Yep. Okay. Quickly talking about hosting. So reminder, we do have a section of the website dedicated to hosting. The big thing that's in there is we've got our sort of 4-year hosting plan that sort of outlines sort of where the national office is headed with regards to hosting major events. And in that document, we actually have a list of municipal funding agencies that, for any level of competition, it could be like a full nationals, it could be down to just a club's, charity card of 10 bouts. We've got a list of agencies who are interested in finding money for you from sort of municipal funding sources related to tourism. Let's be clear about that. But like, some of those grants are up at like $85,000 worth in a year, and some of those grants are at like $500. But I would encourage anyone who is running any competition to go and look and see if, one, your community is on that list, because obviously we don't have every community in Canada, but if your community is there, give them a call and just explain what you're doing. And in the majority of cases, I think they would be interested in finding out, well, what could we do? What could our investment do in order to bring your event to the next level? Right. And I know a lot of organizing committees are interested in finding out what that is. How could I go from a card that's, drawing in $50,000 worth of fundraising for my club up to $80,000 worth of fundraising? Right. That's the type of intervention that they're looking to help with. A reminder that we do have bids out right now, and we're collecting for 2027 nationals. So that's both elite nationals and the U23, U19, U17 nationals. So that bid process will be, tightening up, towards the end of this year in December, and we're hoping to have evaluation of those bids done, and notification out to the successful host organizations, in the first quarter of 2026, so that there's lots of time for them to be able to do planning. Also, we do now have a license for a new competition management system. I fully admit I've been not able to put as much time into getting everything set up in that system. It requires an online database that we are working to set up right now, but it's not a major priority for us at this point. We were hoping to trial that system at our upcoming nationals in Winnipeg. We will not. I would rather use a more tested system than something brand new in order to run our nationals. But when that system is available, it will be available for free for all of our provinces to use. And it can be used in conjunction with a paper system. It can be used with, literal keypads that we will ship out and have available for you. And it can be used at everything from provincial level all the way down to one-off club shows. So anyone who's interested in it, we will run trainings once we are ready to on how to operate it. And one of the advantages of this new system is that it is aware that the internet is a thing. So it will automatically put up schedules and draws up onto the website that is accessible by any of the participants or the public. And all the results are instantly put up there as well. So it does a few things for us. One, it helps get a national database full of results. because we've been itching for this for quite a while. Right now, all our results exist in, thousands of paper books across the country instead of being in one place. It also provides us with the ability to go and provide direct feedback to our officials on how often their decisions on a bout are going with the consensus or against the consensus. And in the last 6 months, I've been talking to a lot of officials across the country, and one of the things that they are really anxious for are more opportunities to get feedback. And I think one of the primary ways we can give them feedback is to say, hey, you're doing a really good job. Like your officiating is on point. You're, more than 95% of the time, your decisions are in with the consensus. That's great. They need to know that. Similarly, if their decisions are more hovering around 75 or 60%, they need to know that too, because they may not even be aware. And that can then give them an opportunity to go and say, okay, well, maybe I need to double check the rule book. I need to make sure I'm talking with my supervisor about what is it that we're emphasizing within the judging criteria, in order to get better. So I'm really, really happy about having this opportunity. We are not interested in getting into the business of policing officials, but we want that information to be available to those officials, and that is not something we're interested in making public, but available to those officials. So just to let you know. And then a reminder about para and adapted boxing. So we've got a committee that's working in this area. As it turns out, we had hoped to be able to have some para competition going on at nationals in 2 weeks. We had started making preparations for this, and we, despite having quite a few phone calls from interested individuals, we had no one actually register. So earlier this week, we pulled the plug on doing that actively at nationals, but the NSO is going to run a para category at the Canada Cup, March 18th through 21st, 2026 in Calgary. So we continue to want to make this happen. We know that this is not going to be, there are not going to be thousands of new members in the para categories, right? But we do want to pilot this so that we can educate or start to educate some of our officials on what this looks like, educate our coaches on what this looks like, and frankly, educate our athletes as to what this looks like, because we know that there are para athletes out there in the clubs right now, who are participating in programming. And if they are interested in competing, then we want to provide a pathway that could allow them to do that. Any questions on hosting stuff? Oh, sorry, I've got one more quickly. Just a reminder that we're really trying to push this year this idea of this national tournament series. Of course, it was related to the qualification for nationals. But at this point, we're ready to recognize sort of Brampton, the Canada Cup, and the Quebec Open, and nationals as these national tournament series events. And we are going to work with the organized committees in order to try to market this idea of, if you are serious about boxing and serious about high quality bouts, then you should be serious about trying to get to as many of these events as you possibly can in the year. So how we execute on that is sort of, that's a question for immediately following nationals and putting together that marketing plan, but we are interested in pushing it. We are also really interested in having one more event. Frankly, it would be great to have another event out in the West each year as another multi-day tournament. So we have in our hosting plan this desire to have a fourth event. I'm not sure we're going to get to it this year, but it is something that if you are interested in making one of an existing event, one of these national tournament series events, we'd love to talk to you about it. Also, we've got this national show series, and this is sort of one-day events where our national team can compete against another national team in a dual meet format. And we have had tremendous success this year, I would suggest, with the Battle of the Prairies and then the Melee Gala, despite only half of the bouts actually being able to be executed. But we've have this opportunity for our junior members of the national team, or I shouldn't say junior, I should say like B-level members of the national team, to have their first international bouts at home in Canada, you know, on friendly soil, to have that great first international experience representing Canada. And we want to continue it, and we've had pretty amazing feedback from the community saying, hey, we're interested in hosting one of these. So this year we had 2. Currently on the national team program, we've got 4 scheduled, and there's an opportunity to add a 5th. And the idea would be to sort of have these peppered across the country, because we also are interested in having, you know, representation in each of our major markets for this, with national team competing on home soil. So thank you to those 2 organizing committees who helped us out this year, and we look forward to bringing on more organizing committees next year. National sanctions. So we have on paper in our rule book a rule that says that if more than 4 provinces are attending an event, if members from more than 4 provinces are attending an event, then automatically it requires a national sanction. I think I know why this rule was put in place, but I don't think it's not being executed on. But 2, it also is potentially problematic in that you may not know if you're running an event until like the week before, let's say, that more than 4 provinces are attending. So I'm not sure that the rule that we have is the right solution for what we're trying to achieve here. So the national sanctioned competitions that we have that we've been executing on right now are certainly our 2 national championships and the Canada Cup, because it's clearly a nationally run event. If there are more new national events that come online that are run by Boxing Canada, or primarily with partners, but primarily run by Boxing Canada, they will certainly fall under this categorization. But we are not interested in chasing down events where we found out after the fact that there were more than 4 provinces in attendance. So, I mean, clearly the Brampton Cup is one that comes up here, and the Quebec Open is one that comes up here. But I don't see anything remarkable about those 2 events, other than the fact that they're massive, and congratulations on the success, where, you know, you need to bring in national level officials. Like it just, I don't think that need is there. So, yeah, we are going to continue working with what is the actual intent of this rule, and how does this rule need to change to right size it to what it actually needs to be going forward.
Hey, Chris, real quick on that. I mean, because when I first jumped into this position a few years back, I think the recognition of this was more geared towards international competition. So if there was more than 4 countries versus provinces, I think that's where it went. At least that was what I was told. So I do, because the interprovincial stuff typically, you're right. I mean, there's not a lot of ways to monitor even smaller events, right? So
yeah. And if we have competitions that are really interested in making a hard push at being, quote, international, then that's something different, right? And the NSO would love to partner with anyone, even if it's just a single promoter who is interested in running an internationally focused competition, then we'll do that. But let's not mix up our current major events, which are clearly domestically focused. And if we happen to have, you know, a team from Ireland come in, or some people from the States come in, like, that doesn't mean that it's now, you know, an internationally focused event, right? I mean, that would be lovely, but I mean, we'll take their money, right? But the national office is not interested in policing this in any major way. But yeah, thank you for that clarification. And if what we need is to just make sure that that language in the rule book is there, then let's change that language, right? And let's get there. Okay. On PTSO sanction information sharing, this is something that I think is critical. And apparently years and years and years ago, anytime an event happened in Canada at the local level, so it was sanctioned by the province, then the province would pass on some sort of report or sanction activity report about that event up to the national office. That certainly hasn't been happening in the time I've been here. It hasn't been happening, I think, in the time that any of our current staff have been here. But I would really like to see this happening again, because we just need good data on what's actually going on, especially around injuries, but also on participation. So we have now, with the help of both BC and Ontario, put together a database system here in the office where we can pull in reports, and those reports are mostly automatically converted into a format that we can use them, and we can now generate reports back to the provinces or to local organizing committees about their participation and what that looked like compared to other events, what that looks like compared to other provinces, what their participation rates as a, how many U13s versus U15s versus U17s did you get at your event compared to other events? How many injuries are we getting per 100 or per 1,000 bouts? Like, these are all metrics that we can now provide back. So we are going to start primarily working with Ontario and with BC in order to see what the workflow looks like on these. But we will be encouraging other provinces, probably starting in February 2026, on a province by province basis. Like, we'll go to, say, Nova Scotia, say, okay, let's get you guys all set up. Let's make sure we understand how the information sharing is going to go. And let's start sending this information up the chain. And let's, because by the end of 2026, I would really like to have this locked down, because we are going to continue having issues around trying to, optimize our insurance rates and stuff until we can prove with high quality data that we are actually as safe as we know that we are compared to other sports. So just want to give a heads up to everyone on that. But like I said, we'll be going on a individual province by province basis to sort of bring you guys online with the system once we know that it's working well through the work that we've done with Ontario and BC. Okay. I do want to touch on this. I know Don mentioned the Winnipeg incident. So out of that, we are going to have an outside agency do a full review of sort of all of our processes and procedures around sanctioning, and just to sort of see what the lay of the land is within Canada and make recommendations on where we should go in the future in order to minimize risk, maximize participation, and make sure that we're in line with sort of international standards and standards of other combat sports within Canada. So we've engaged with an organization who can do this work for us. I would suggest that our timeline is probably around January, that they'll start doing information gathering, and then they will continue that information gathering for probably a 2-month period. Then there'll be a month of analysis, and then there'll be a month of sort of putting together recommendations. My suspicion is that we will get a huge long list of recommendations that could range everywhere from you should get rid of masters competition, period, all the way to we think everything that you're doing is great and hunky-dory and you should continue doing what you're doing, to why are you judging events for say U15s that using the same scoring system that you use for Olympians, right? I mean, it could be all over the board. We'll see what comes out of that, but we'll share certainly all of those recommendations with each of the provinces, and then we'll probably need to engage in an interprovincial discussion around what do we feel a minimum standards are. And I gotta say, my firm belief right now is that all of our provinces are doing absolutely a fantastic job with maintaining minimum standards on sanctioning that relate to both participation and safety. But having an outside agency sort of confirm this and make recommendations on where we might want to go to, I think will be very important. And we know that there are challenges within some provinces right now around sanctioning and sport commissions and stuff, and particularly in BC, but we're hearing about it in other provinces as well. And we feel that if we've got some good information, both from pulling in sanctioned competition information and having this outside review done, that we'll have some ammunition to use when maybe recommendations are coming from provincial authorities that we think are outside of what's necessary in order to provide safe sport. So I just want to give everyone a heads up that is happening. Okay. A quick talk about NSO communications. So our website, we know it's old. We are not in a position to be able to change it anytime soon, but we continue updating information on there. We thank everyone who gives us feedback on, hey, I was trying to find something that I thought would be there and I couldn't find it. And we try to act as quickly as we can on that stuff. The weekly email summary system is available for anyone who's interested in it. Reminder that our online store is there, and the primary use for the online store, let's be clear, is to get evaluated as a coach. But we do have things for sale. There is a press release system. If you're not currently getting our press releases and you would like them, just let us know. We'll put you on the list. We don't send out press releases very often, and most of it's around competition. And then some other updates. So all of our meeting videos that we record, we're moving on to YouTube as a platform in order to host them. It's cheaper for us because we're not hosting tons of gigabytes of stuff, and it provides one location for people to be able to find things. We also, of course, are working really hard to do live streaming at least once a week of national team practices. And we've got, I mean, this was requested by members of our community. And I'm not sure that watching an entire hour and a half practice is like the most exciting thing in the world, but we actually get a lot of feedback and questions from coaches who pick out parts of what we're doing during these practices and ask us for more specific information on exercises and drills and why are you doing it in that way. So we know that people are watching. We're hoping to be able to engage some of our national team athletes to edit some of those long format videos down into short format, right? Like, here are the 3 drills that we did today. Boom, boom, boom. As opposed to having to scroll through an entire hour and a half. And then just a reminder that we do, of course, have all of our committee reports and board meeting reports available for everyone to look at through that system. And of course, if you have any questions, please contact us at the info@boxingcanada.org. Just want to highlight, especially in the last week, in fact, I'd say the last month, all of our web traffic has been looking for information on nationals. So that's bodes well for the event coming up, because it sounds like there's excitement there. And a reminder about these update meetings. So what we're aiming for is that we're alternating between PTSO updates, officials program updates, and coach program updates in this sort of second Thursday, Friday of every month time period. So this month it's PTSO, next month it's coach updates, and the month after that it's officials updates, and then we got back in for the next PTSO update. So we're on that schedule. High performance program updates happen every month. There's just a lot of information there. And they're happening on the 4th Thursday and Friday of every month. We're actually going to be doing it live from Winnipeg 2 weeks from now. And then one last reminder, if you could please go through and look on your website, if you have any existing links to any AIBA or IBA materials, we really need those updated. I will cop to it. There are 2 significant links that we still have to old materials. One of them is an old AIBA document on how to be an effective ringside doctor. And we just feel that it's a great resource. Other than the fact that it's got AIBA on the title card, the information is all really, really high quality. And we think that every ringside doctor should be looking at this stuff before they sign up. And then the other one is actually on our blue books. I'm looking around the table. I don't have a blue book in front of me, but we order our blue books like 10,000 units at a time. And we still have the old logos on there. So there's an IBA logo on it. I'm really hoping that at some point in the future, we won't have blue books anymore. We'll be in an entirely electronic system, but we are not going to scrap a whole bunch of blue books simply because it's got a bad logo on it. We are not going to throw away that asset. So we'll continue using those until we burn through all of them, and then we'll make an update. But I do want to acknowledge that I'm asking you guys to take a look at your own internal services, and we have done an audit of our own as well. Okay, and final reminders. So on governance, we do have our AGM coming up on the 6th. You should probably see, in fact, I want to say later today, but it may be Monday, sort of an update to our current agenda. A reminder that the AGM is a business meeting. It is not an opportunity to sort of have long format discussions around policy and procedure. We want to get this meeting to turn into that, or at least be a jumping off point. So we've been very information dose heavy for the first 2 or 3 of these. And I think we're going to reduce that down and get more into the opportunity for discussion starting in the new year. But just a reminder that that's coming up. And of course, national finances are always an interesting discussion. We are, as always, we always seem to be like a month away from finishing our audit. But we are doing a dual audit right now for our 2023-2024 seasons and 2024-25 seasons. I've been around now for 2.5 years, and we've already done 2 audits, but we were catching up on this stuff. So we still have been finding some issues with past processing of payroll, some of our CRA relationships where money has not been sent into CRA in a timely manner. And we had a CBA loan during the pandemic that we have essentially not been servicing and can't find a lot of documentation on. So we're working through all those sort of past problems, but by the time of the AGM, if we don't have final financial statements, then I think we've got a big problem with our executive director at that point. So I just want to make sure everyone's aware of all that, and we encourage everyone to show up for our AGM. But a reminder, it is a voting by province, right? Because our technically provinces are our technical members of the NSO. So it is a very constrained environment. So while we encourage any of our participants to sit in, it is just the provincial representatives who have voting and speaking rights at that meeting. And a note on Indigenous programming. So our Indigenous committee got kicked off, and we've now got these 3 major areas of support. One is if you've got Indigenous coaches and officials, we have essentially a subsidy program so that they don't have to pay for coach education or officials education. And we'll be publicizing that quite widely starting next week, but I just want to give everyone a heads up. There is also some support available direct to clubs. We've got 2 pilot projects working in the Calgary area right now, and we're looking to expand that. And then, of course, this framework for Indigenous only novice competitions that we're trying out at the Canada Cup this year. But if it looks like it's working, then we're happy to share our learnings and provide some assistance to anyone else who's interested in running one of those as needed, of course. Okay, and I don't have a lot else here. ITPs, I said this, I think, at the last meeting. Since we got rid of the policy, the hard policy, and turned it into a voluntary thing, we've actually getting more ITPs being sent in. So I think that's great. The National Office and Training Center, we are about to move one more time back from our temporary location where we are now back to our permanent location now that the roof construction is wrapping up. Trans athlete policy. World Boxing has gone to a genetic testing standard internationally, which means that we need to do a complete revamp on our trans athlete policy, and you'll start to see some stuff come out about that in December. Hall of Fame, two things. One, we're moving to a banquet format starting next year because we've got our last two inductions for this year happening in Winnipeg in 2 weeks. But we're gonna change up the format a little bit going forward. And if you or your province have any nominations for the Hall of Fame, please don't be shy about getting those in. There'll be one more reminder that'll go out immediately after the induction ceremony in Winnipeg, because we would really love to get a few more nominees. We've already got nominations in for 2026, but we know that there are probably a few more deserving people out there who meet the fairly strict criteria that we have. And live streaming. If you have an event that you would like to have live streamed, but you haven't either been able to find someone to do it for you, or you've live streamed and it hasn't gone well, either because you had to pay a big fee up front and then didn't really make any money off of it, let us know. We have a set of cameras that we will literally send to you. They're super easy to use. You set them up, you set it, you forget it, it works off an iPad, and the live streaming will happen. So we're happy to provide that service. We feel that the more Olympic style boxing that we can put out into the public, the better. Both to serve our members so that, you know, moms, dads, and grandparents can see athletes compete, but also so that we can show off the great product that we have. And I think that's it. Yeah, so critical list. So reminder, membership fees go up starting January 1st. Hall of Fame nominations, if you've got them. Bids for 2027 events. If you know of anyone who's interested in doing it, get those in. There'll be a reminder going out and published to our website shortly. And then AGM on December 6th. We look forward to seeing all the provinces there. Okay, that's our wrap on everything I've got. Look at that. I only went 34 minutes late. Jesus. Oh, the staff are all laughing at me here. But again, we'll start changing the format of these meetings a little bit, so it's less stand and deliver and more discussion. But I'm going to stop the recording now. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask.